when everyone was who were getting the Model 3s were former owners, which means they either had an S or an X. So pretty much they were all from the perspective of Model S owners downgrading to the Model 3. I thought I might post something a little different since I never had a Model S, or much less a Model X, not really a luxury car kind of guy. Went from a Chevy to a Model 3. So this is the perspective of a Model 3 owner. I've been driving one since late July. And my Model 3 is in the shop because trying to piece off the steering wheel came a little loose, and apparently the fix for that is to replace the steering wheel. So I've had this loaner Model S for a few days since Saturday, I believe, or maybe earlier. Yeah, Saturday, and it is now Wednesday. So this is the perspective of a Model 3 owner going to a Model S. One thing that does stick out is definitely the Model 3's got a more modern design. But then, of course, the Model S has got more luxury aspects of it. It is, obviously the higher end car. Incidentally, this loaner is so new, it's only got 1,200 miles on it. No one bothered naming it, so I took the liberty of naming it Rodimus Prime, former leader of the Autobots. Could have gone with his original name of Hot Rod, but that seemed a little too on the nose. So my Model 3 is a long-range rear-wheel drive. It is, obviously kind of the current, well, until recently, the current base model available. Now that you got the mid-range. So, and this over here is the base model 75D. It's got the glass roof, which is much bigger than in the Model 3. So that's one of the pros. The other pros I like about the 75D is it is quicker than my rear-wheel drive, and you can feel it. Whee! With the all-wheel drive, this is probably less of an issue, and obviously it's slower than the performance Model 3. So I better not ever test drive that, or I will be dissatisfied with my current one. Something else that's nice about the S is the air suspension over here. Being able to change these around is pretty cool, and it does give a smoother ride. Though my wife didn't really notice much of a difference. The screen is definitely more integrated. It looks really nice compared to the kind of stuck-on Model 3. Being able to do multiple windows is great.
Nick from Tesla Service, how are you, sir?
Oh, doing okay.
Hey, sir, I'm just calling to let you know your vehicle is ready for pickup.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'll pick it up at the end of the day then.
All right, sir. See you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, there we go. So, as I was saying, the screen looks more integrated. Also, the web browser, in general, works a lot better than in the Model 3. I don't know if it's just a, I'm guessing it's a software thing, so hopefully that'll be resolved. The glove box having its own dedicated button is very convenient. Also, over here we've got a dedicated mirror fold button, which is great when I'm trying to park the giant boat of a car in my tiny garage. The other obvious pro on the Model S is the exterior door handles are great. The presenting handles, it's easy to grab, and then having to explain to people how to open it up or fiddling around with it with using your thumb and then your other fingers. So that's also a big plus. Now for the cons, what I don't like about this car, the inner door handles are horrible. They just feel so archaic, and they're kind of on the far side. My wife's we're both kind of short, so it feels like a bit of a reach. Compared to the Model 3 buttons, it does feel archaic. Instead of just pressing something. The vents actually felt kind of archaic, not being able to just touch screen the vents. It feels a little silly, but suddenly it just, you get used to the Model 3 and now it's glaringly obvious. One thing, I like to drive with the rear view camera on. The rear visibility is pretty terrible in both of these cars. It actually feels worse in this than in the Model 3. What I do like about the Model 3 is it's got a dedicated button you can just press right next to the rendering of the car. And this one, you've got to go to the menu and then touch it. Now that's probably not too big of an issue, except for the fact that my wife gets motion sick when I've got this on, so I have to, when we're on the road and she's in the car with me, I got to toggle it back on and off. I usually just have it on when I'm like actively changing lanes. So that gives an extra step, which I'm not a big fan of. Alright, the steering wheel feels huge to me. I guess I prefer a smaller steering wheel, but it needs to be big because you need to be able to see the instrument cluster. Also, the wheel itself, all of these stocks feel a little messy. The Model 3, you've only got, you know, your left stock and your right stock over here. What you can't see is the steering wheel adjustment stock, and that just seems a little redundant since, you know, as we know, you can do all the adjustments, at least in the Model 3, with just the jog wheels and the screen. And how often do you really need to be adjusting the steering wheel position on the fly? You just really need to set that up on your profile once. Also, there's the dedicated Autopilot stock. Nice having the being able to click your different follow distances, but it feels redundant since with a Model 3, you know, everything's done with just the gear stock double pressing down, and all of those adjustments are done with the steering wheel jog dials. Now the wheel dials have a separate left-right button instead of clicking left and right like you get with the Model 3. They are easier to use, but the only downside I can see is when you're playing your Atari arcade games. It means you can't have your finger on the same joystick. So the added instrument cluster, or the original instrument cluster, whichever way you want to look at it, does allow you to display more stuff at once. Now, with the Model 3, we've got the energy management app, or whatever you want to call that, just like here. So previously on the S, you'd have that on the cluster like I have here. Now it's kind of neat at first, especially if you're new to electric cars, but honestly I'm kind of over it because I drove a Prius and then a Volt, so I don't really even bother, so I could do without it, but it is a pretty neat novelty. The other functions you can put on here are, you know, so what music you're listening to, so you don't have to look all the way over here. I do appreciate being able to put your trip on there. So let's say we're navigating to someplace, so that way you can get
US 101 south for 2.4 miles.
You can get your north view up here, which is how I prefer to see things. And over here we've got our third-person driving view. There you go. So that is pretty cool. But as I said, it means having a larger steering wheel, and not really needed. But hey, it's a luxury car. Now, for the stupidest complaint about the Model S that I have, and stupid as it's very petty, is this shade for the instrument cluster. So I guess one minus of having an instrument cluster is you need a shade for it so you can see it, and I keep jamming my fingers on it, so literally undrivable. So how does Autopilot compare between the 3 and the S? These are both the latest version of the Autopilot hardware. Hardware version 2.5 with 8 cameras, radar, I think a dozen ultrasonic sensors. The only difference, the only camera that's missing is the interior camera that you have on the 3 to watch the cabin for the later ride-sharing network. Other than that, there's hardware parity. They're both running the same NVIDIA.
In 500 feet, turn right onto Tampa Avenue.
They're both running the same NVIDIA Autopilot computer. One thing I've noticed though is I do not have navigate on Autopilot here, since these are both version 42.2. I'm guessing it must be because of the lack of I don't have a map update. So from what I understand, you need to have the latest maps for the nav on Autopilot to work. Or maybe it's because this is the trial version of the Autopilot. It was the only available Model S loaner that had it. But yeah, other than that, it's pretty much the same. Now, I prefer the feel of a smaller car. I used to drive an Integra, and then a Prius, and then a Volt. Now, finally, a full EV with a Model 3. That said, compared to the Model 3, the S feels way too big for me. I feel like I'm driving a boat. Not only am I worried about hitting things while parking, it just kind of feels mushy. Even with the steering set to sport, it's still not as tight as the Model 3 on standard to me. and just the kind of the way the car just feels when it moves. It just feels like a slight lag. Maybe I need to drive with the suspension set to low or something like that. I have it on the standard. Other than that, I gotta say the Model S has got spades of room. I like the fact that you can lower the seats down. The lift back, the automatic lift back is really nice, and of course you got a lot more front space. That said, I think I still prefer my Model 3. Maybe it's just sour grapes, but yeah, I'll stick with that, and I'm happy that I can go pick it up today. Alright, thanks for watching. Oh, one other thing. If you do decide to get a Model 3 S or even an X, I'd appreciate if you'd use my referral code if you thought this was handy. It's Jose84213. JOSE84213. Alright, have a good one.